Welcome back to Inside Chlorpromazine, the podcast that dives deep into the science and potential applications of chlorpromazine, especially in the context of COVID-19. I'm your host, Sowmya, and today's episode is an exciting one. We're going to explore how chlorpromazine might influence the immune system during a COVID-19 infection. The immune system plays a critical role in defending the body against infections. But sometimes, in the case of COVID-19, the immune response can become exaggerated or dysregulated, leading to severe inflammation and complications. In this episode, we'll discuss how chlorpromazine could help modulate the immune system and potentially reduce the harmful effects of an overactive immune response. To help us explore this, we'll join by Chythanya, a biochemistry graduate, a microbiology researcher with expertise in immunology and viral infections. Welcome to the show, Chaitanya.
Thank you for having me, Soumya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we dive into today's topic, could you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and experience in studying the immune system and antiviral treatments?
Yeah, I have spent the majority of my career studying how viruses interact with the immune system and how the immune system can sometimes overreact, causing tissue damage and worsening the disease. With COVID-19, we have seen that the immune response can be both protective as well as harmful, which is why understanding how to modulate this response is so important. I have been involved in research into repurposed drugs, including chlorpromazine, to understand how they might help control the immune system's reaction to viral infections like COVID-19.
To start off, could you explain a bit about the immune response to COVID-19 and why, in some cases, it can become detrimental to patients?
Of course, when the body is infected with SARS-CoV-2, the immune system activates a response to try to fight the virus. This includes the activation of WBC, the release of cytokine, and the production of antibodies to neutralize the virus. Normally, this is a protective response. However, in some cases, particularly in severe COVID-19 infection, the immune system goes into overdrive, releasing excessive amounts of cytokine in a phenomenon known as cytokine storm. A cytokine storm is essentially an uncontrolled, excessive immune response that can lead to widespread inflammation, tissue damage, and even organ failure. Now, this is one of the primary reasons why some COVID-19 patients experience severe outcomes, such as acute respiratory distress syndrome, and require intensive care. Modulating the immune response to avoid such severe reactions is a key part of COVID-19 treatment strategy.
That's really interesting. So, in essence, the immune system is trying to fight off the virus, but it ends up doing more harm than good in certain situations. How does chlorpromazine fit into this picture?
Great question. Chlorpromazine has been shown to have immune modulatory effects, meaning it can influence or alter the activity of the immune system. One of the ways it does this is by inhibiting the release of certain pro-inflammatory cytokines that are involved in the cytokine storm. By reducing the production of these inflammatory molecules, chlorpromazine could help to prevent or mitigate the harmful inflammation that occurs in severe COVID-19 cases. Furthermore, chlorpromazine also has effects on immune cells like macrophages, which plays a central role in inflammation. By modulating the activity of these immune cells, chlorpromazine might help balance the immune response, enabling the body to fight the virus without causing excessive damage to healthy tissues.
You mentioned cytokine storms earlier. Can chlorpromazine specifically help prevent or reduce the severity of a cytokine storm in COVID-19 patients?
Yes, chlorpromazine's ability to reduce the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines is one of its key mechanisms in preventing cytokine storms. Research has shown that chlorpromazine can reduce the levels of cytokines like interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, both of which are major contributors to inflammatory process in COVID-19. By reducing the levels of these cytokines like chlorpromazine, chlorpromazine can potentially dampen the excessive inflammation that leads to tissue damage and worsen symptoms in COVID-19 patients. Like in fact, some studies have suggested that chlorpromazine may not only reduce inflammation but also helps to promote a more controlled immune response, allowing the body to focus its efforts on fighting the virus without triggering excessive damage to the lungs and other organs.
That sounds promising, but chlorpromazine is primarily known for its use in psychiatric conditions such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. How did researchers first identify its potential use in modulating the immune response in viral infections like COVID-19?
That's a great point. Chlorpromazine, as you mentioned, was originally developed as an antipsychotic medication. However, over the years, researchers have realized that many of the drugs used for psychiatric conditions also have effects on other systems in the body, including the immune system. Chlorpromazine in particular has shown immunomodulatory properties in a variety of contexts, including autoimmune disease and viral infections. When the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, scientists began looking for existing drugs that could potentially be repurposed for the treatment of COVID-19. Chlorpromazine was among the candidates because of its ability to modulate immune responses. Its anti-inflammatory properties and its effect on cellular pathways that are important for viral replication, these factors made it an attractive candidate for further research in the context of COVID-19.
You mentioned research studies. Have there been any clinical trials or studies specifically exploring chlorpromazine's ability to modulate the immune system in COVID-19 patients?
Yes, there have been a few studies that have explored the potential of chlorpromazine in treating COVID-19, particularly in reducing inflammation and modulating the immune system. Some early stage clinical trials have shown promising results with patients receiving chlorpromazine experience a reduction in inflammatory markers and improvement in symptoms compared to those who did not receive the drug. So, however, it's important to note that these studies are still preliminary. While the initial findings are promising, we need more rigorous, large scale clinical trials to confirm the effectiveness and safety of chlorpromazine for the specific purposes. The clinical evidence is still evolving, but the early results are certainly encouraging.
There are many anti-inflammatory drugs being tested for COVID-19. How does chlorpromazine compare to other drugs that target the immune system, such as corticosteroids or IL-6 inhibitors?
Chlorpromazine is quite unique in its approach. While corticosteroids and IL-6 inhibitors like tocilizumab specifically targeted cytokines and immune cells directly involved in inflammation. The chlorpromazine works by modulating broader immune pathways, including those involved in immune cell signaling and viral replication. Unlike corticosteroids which suppress the immune system, overall, chlorpromazine doesn't seem to have a broad and immunosuppressive effect. So this means it may be less likely to increase the risk of secondary infections or other complications associated with immune suppression. However, the downside is that chlorpromazine effect on immune modulation are still not as well as understood as those of more established immunomodulatory drugs. So more research is needed to fully compare these drugs.
Given its potential to modulate the immune system, do you think chlorpromazine could be used as an adjunctive therapy in combination with other treatments for COVID-19?
Yes, I believe chlorpromazine could be a valuable addition to a combination therapy approach. It could potentially be used alongside other antiviral treatments or immune modulating drugs to help reduce inflammation, control viral replication, and as well as improve patient outcomes. So, by targeting multiple aspects of disease, combination therapy could offer a more comprehensive treatment strategy. However, as with any combination treatment, it's important to carefully assess the interaction between drugs and the overall safety profile of the combination.
This has been such an insightful discussion. Chaitanya, as we wrap up today, do you have any final thoughts on chlorpromazine's role in modulating the immune system in COVID-19?
Chlorpromazine is definitely an intriguing drug, and while there is still a lot we need to learn, its potential to modulate the immune response and reduce harmful inflammation in COVID-19 patients make it a promising candidate for further research. As always, we need more clinical data to determine how best to use it in the fight against COVID-19, but I am optimistic about its potential. Thank you for having me, Sowmya. It was great to discuss this important topic with you.
And thank you to all our listeners for tuning into another episode of Inside Chlorpromazine. We'll be back next week with more exciting discussions on the role of chlorpromazine in COVID-19 treatment. Until then, stay safe and stay curious.